Hey, Knitting Mamas, and welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Today is episode 30. I can't believe it. I started this little podcast in January this year. So we're about 6 months in. And here we are on episode 30, and I can't believe it. I'm just so overwhelmed by the number of people who tune in every single week to listen to these episodes. I wanted to thank you so much for listening to this podcast, to every episode, every week, and for supporting me as you tune in every week and as you listen and give me feedback and ask me questions, all the things. So I'm really grateful to have started this, to have you around, and to be able to deliver this to you every single week. So thank you so very much. If there's ever anything that you want me to talk about on the podcast, feel free to send me a message on Instagram at the Knitting Mamas. Just DM me on there and I will see if I can bring your topic onto the podcast on a future episode. All right, let's dive into today's episode. We're going to talk about how knitting can transform your life and one of the surprising benefits that you absolutely need to know about. So let's go and dive in. Hey there, Mama. Welcome to the Knitting Mamas podcast. If you're a mom who's tired of feeling exhausted and longing for some well-deserved self-care and rest, you are in the right place. I know that finding time for yourself as a busy mom can feel like an impossible puzzle. But guess what? You don't have to compromise anymore. Hi, I'm your host, Nadine Medina, and just like you, I am a mom, wife, and also a happy knitter. Over my 15 years of motherhood, I have been on a journey to discover how to truly recharge without the guilt and the never-ending quest for perfection. The secret? It's all about progress, not perfection. By focusing on simple routines, natural wellness solutions, and the cozy art of knitting, I found the path to feeling whole and content. And on this podcast, I am sharing it all with you so you can do the same. Are you ready to find simple solutions to set yourself free from mom guilt, to take more time for yourself to truly rest, and to use your knitting skills for a mindful routine that creates space in your life so you can breathe easier? Let's take a deep breath, grab those knitting needles, and say goodbye to mom stress. Together, we'll create a supportive community that encourages you to prioritize self-care while juggling all your responsibilities. Sound good? Let's do this. Okay, so today we're going to talk about a single benefit of knitting. You know, there's many amazing benefits to this craft, but today we're going to zero in on one of them. And this one benefit is possibly one that people might overlook because it isn't necessarily something you think about immediately. You also don't necessarily think about it as something that you would really need unless, you kind of dive a little bit deeper, which is why I think it's so important to talk about. And I think it's just so cool that a fun craft that, is amazing to do, that you really enjoy, can actually give you this cool thing as well. So I'm talking about the benefit of focusing on one thing at a time. And you might be like, why is that a benefit? How is that going to be good for me? Well, let's talk a little bit about multitasking and why I honestly think multitasking is a myth. There's a lot of people out there who think that there's benefits to multitasking, but I honestly think there's a misconception because I don't think it's the best way to efficiently handle things, daily tasks, or any tasks, honestly, because I do feel like if you multitask, you never truly in whichever thing you're trying to get done. So you're always kind of like half in, half out. And in my personal experience, you don't get something done, with 100% your best. So you will do probably okay, but I think number one, it takes longer to get something done when you're doing 2 or 3 things at a time versus just finishing one thing, then doing the next, and then doing the next thing. But you're also only getting mediocre results most of the time. I'm not saying that that's the case every time, but for the most part, I think not focusing on one thing fully will not lead to the best results possible. So I think it's important for us to train that focusing on one thing at a time muscle, because in today's day and age, we always feel pulled in all the directions, and that we have to get multiple things done at a time, or otherwise we just don't have enough time to do everything. And of course, there's always the possibility to ditch something off of your to-do list in order to do only the important things, but I find that pretty hard. So I think we're in the end we're gaining time or saving time by doing one thing fully, focusing on it, and then move on to the next. I do realize that in reality that is not always possible like that, but if we can mostly do it that way, I think we're really going to benefit. So how is knitting going to come into that? Let's talk about that in a second. I wanted to share with you some statistics that I found, which is really, really interesting. So knitting can actually enhance your concentration and your mental clarity. But get this first, these statistics right here. According to the American Psychological Association, multitasking can reduce your productivity by up to 40%. This is because switching between tasks often takes more time and effort than focusing on one task at a time. A study found that it takes an average of 23 minutes to refocus on a task after an interruption, leading to significant time lost throughout the day. Multitasking has been shown to increase stress levels and the risk of burnout. When individuals attempt to juggle multiple tasks, it can lead to mental exhaustion and increased levels of cortisol, which is the stress hormone. By contrast, monotasking helps in maintaining a calmer, more focused work environment, which can reduce stress and prevent burnout. So if we practice to focus on one thing at a time, we can really increase our productivity and decrease the sense of feeling all over the place. And I think as moms, this is crucial. There is going to be days where you are pulled in all directions, and just the nature of motherhood and, the unpredictability of your day, kind of calls for us to do multiple things at a time. But wherever you can, try to just do the one thing at a time. And for me, examples, they're super simple examples. We're moms who are running a household. It's like I start unloading the dishwasher and then realize that I hadn't put something else away on the other side of the kitchen or in the living room. And then I run over there and I'm like, oh, I need to put this away. And then I find something that reminds me of another task. And then I start that task. And then I probably stumble over my laundry basket at some point and realize I hadn't put that in the wash yet, which literally right now, the second as I'm talking about it, reminds me that I did forget to put my laundry into the washer this morning. So there will always be something that you come across in your home where you're like, oh, and it's this continuous thread of starting something and not finishing it. But it's not always necessary. And we do that because we feel like otherwise we're just going to forget it. So I want to encourage all of us, myself included, to truly work on, just training that muscle of let's finish this first and then let's move on. Because we can also always make a note of something so that we don't forget it later on, right? So that is just my personal struggle when it comes to focusing and, focusing on one thing at a time. Focus, I can do, but this concept of finishing one thing and then moving on to the next is definitely something where I have some room for improvement myself. So I think it's a really good topic to talk about. So how can knitting help you accomplish that? Let's talk about that. So, knitting requires a lot of attention to detail, right? You have to follow a pattern. You have a lot of repetitive motions. And this whole thing can actually help you train your brain to focus on just that one thing. Because really, if you're trying to, look at a pattern and count out rows or have a color shift at a certain point, there's really moments when you just can't focus on anything else other than that. And you either do it or you don't. But if you make the conscious choice of saying, I am doing this right now, I'm sitting here and I'm knitting, and you do that more often, you work it into your life as a regular habit, you can literally help train your brain to become better at this. I'm doing this one thing right now, and I am not going to let myself move over here and do something else. What I also find helpful while you're knitting, to put your phone far away from you. Because once you started knitting and you have your project with you and you're kind of like tangled up in your yarn and, and your knitting needles, it is not as fun to just drop it real quick and get up and look at your phone, just because you have this impulse to look at your phone, which is oftentimes why we even get out of focus. Let's just be real. A lot of times our multitasking, I'm putting it in air quotes here, is not absolutely necessary. We're like, oh, let me check this social media real quick. Oh, let me send this person a text message. And then you remember you had to reply to somebody. All those things are just kind of like fabricated. They're not necessary in that moment, but we have come to this place of continuous distraction. And that's where our multitasking is really coming from. We are not trying to get multiple things done at once. We are just doing all these things at once because that's how distracted we have become. So by leaving your phone maybe somewhere else while you're practicing knitting for 15, 20 minutes, you are literally forcing yourself to just stay on track with your knitting and focus on that, right? So I actually find that knitting in those cases then almost becomes a form of meditation where, you have this rhythmic, repetitive nature, this kind of like repeated pattern that keeps coming up where you're like, okay, next row, next row, next row, and we're doing the same movements. It can really kind of lull you into like this calmer state, and it can help you also reduce stress and manage your emotions better. I know it sounds too good to be true that something as simple as knitting can actually do that for you. But every time I sit down and I knit and I do not have my phone around me so that I'm not even tempted to look at it, I get into that spot, into that space where I'm like, wow, this is amazing. I'm actually feeling this vibe, right? I'm in that. My thoughts can process things. I have come up with solutions to problems while knitting. It's just amazing. And you definitely notice a difference in your focus on one thing at a time when you do this more often, when you make this a habit, and when you then compare how you're acting in the rest of your life and in your day-to-day actions and your to-do list and your activities, that you will all of a sudden notice that you are completing tasks more often before you start a new one, because you're just training that muscle over and over and over that, no, now is not the time to look at my phone. Now is not the time to get up. I am doing this project right now. I'm working on my knitting. And I find it so fascinating that this hobby that is so simple to learn, that can give you so many other amazing benefits, including the sense of accomplishment for having completed something that you can be so proud of, that something that simple can give us such a breakthrough in our daily lives. Because I really, really think this can have such an impact and such a ripple effect on the rest of your life. Just think about it in terms of your listening skills. If you have truly mastered, not just getting distracted from your project as you knit on it, you can also translate that into better listening skills, and you can stay on course when you're listening to somebody. You can look them in the eye and you can not, feel distracted by maybe the pinging of your phone or of your watch or something else that might go on around you. And I think those are such important things that we're, in a sense, starting to lose as a society. So I really, really find this so important to talk about. And I'm honestly really excited and curious what you think about this concept of using knitting as a form of practicing your focus muscle and your, monotasking muscle versus multitasking. And I also would love to hear how you feel about multitasking. If you feel like you're, you feel like you have to do it, like there's just no other way, or if you're feeling like you're just doing it because you're kind of falling into the habit of distraction, or, if you're just like, nope, I don't multitask because it's just not for me. I can't even do it, which I'd honestly believe most of us are that way. Like, I don't think we're made to multitask. But there are probably people out there who actually are good at it. I'm pretty sure that's the case too. So would love to hear from you about that. We can discuss this over on Instagram. Or if you want to hop over into our free Facebook community, you can do that as well. And we can start the conversation in there. I would love to hear about that. Free Facebook group. You can join us at bit.ly/thenittingmamas, bit.ly/thenittingmamas. I will also put these links into the show notes so you can just click on them and it'll take you right there. So I want to provide you with some practical tips on how you actually can not start your knitting journey. Well, we have that too. There's a YouTube channel that I have where you can actually start your knitting journey if you are not a knitter yet. You can find those on YouTube. I'm going to share the link with you. As a matter of fact, I'm going to give it to you right now as well, because I can, and that way you can go right over there if you want it. And hang on. Let me find it for you real quick. It is bit.ly/learn-to-knit. So bit.ly/learn-to-knit. That would be your YouTube beginners knitting playlist. So it has all the foundations that you need in order to get started with knitting. If you want to, reap these amazing benefits of the craft, so go and check that out. And the next thing that I want to tell you about is the amazing workbook that I just finished, I guess 2 weeks ago. It is a free workbook for you, coming with a video and a 5-day challenge that will give you practical tips on how to make more time to actually get creative or be creative. I know a lot of you guys out there are just like me who, have loved knitting or crocheting or anything else creative in the past. But since you've become a mom, it may have kind of moved into the background, if not completely disappeared from your life. That's what it was for me. And I just couldn't even figure out when I used to do that stuff. So I came up with a couple of solutions that I learned along the way over the years and years that I have been a mother, wanting to really get back to that creative time, that outlet that I used to love so much. And so I have 6 strategies for you. They're super simple to integrate, but put them together in a workbook for you. I made a video that will help you, guide you through it, and also talk about a very big piece, which is the mental and mindset part of it, that will free you from the guilt that you might feel when you sit down and take time for yourself. There might be guilt involved, with your children, maybe your house, that you're neglecting things. Like, we've got all these crazy stories in our minds. And I want to help you just basically battle those thoughts, because they're not serving us at all. So go ahead and download that free workbook. I can't wait to hear what you think. And if you're implementing the tips, you don't have to implement them all at once. But if you do want to do that, there is a challenge within the workbook. And I talk about it in the video too, how you can implement them during the week of the challenge. You can just do it on your own. You can come into our group and we can do the challenge together. I am just super excited to get that into your hands. So go ahead and download that workbook as well. The link to the workbook and the video is thenittingmamas.com/free workbook. thenittingmamas.com/free workbook. And again, I'm putting those links into the show notes so that you can go ahead and just click on them. Hopefully you will join us inside of the free community. I cannot wait to welcome you in there. And just to wrap up this episode, I really hope that you can find that benefit of your knitting time as well, as you move your phone away from your knitting space and just focus on the craft, on your pattern, whatever you're doing. Maybe put some music on, and it's just going to be so much more amazing for you. And you're also going to make more progress on your project. I mean, and that just goes to show that when we're half in and half out, things just don't get done as quickly and as efficiently. So there you have it. Can't wait to talk to you again here on this podcast next week. Until then, bye. Take care. Hey mama, I hope you've soaked up some great ideas from today's episode. Remember, a happy mom makes for a happy fam. If today's chat hit home with you, it would mean the world if you could leave a 5-star written review on iTunes. Your review will help other moms discover our community and embrace guilt-free self-care. Also, if you're scrolling through Instagram, why not snap a screenshot of this episode for your stories? Don't forget to tag me at The Knitting Mamas so that I can shout you out on my page as well. Plus, that way we can stay connected and spread the self-care magic. Oh, and have you heard about our cozy Facebook community? It's a guilt-free zone where we share relaxing routines, essential oils, and knitting adventures, and so much more. Come join us today at bit.ly/knittingmamas and let's unwind together. Until we chat again, take care, mama. And remember, looking after yourself is not selfish. It's essential for that balanced life. Catch you soon right here on the Knitting Mamas podcast.